We have with us a very fascinating guest, my dear friend, best-selling Lebanese author Karim El Koussa. He's written such masterpieces as The Phoenician Code, Jesus the Phoenician, Pythagoras the Mathemagician, which some of you may recall that I mentioned on Gaia's Mystery Teachings, as well as he has a new book out called Kabbalistic Visions. He's working on an amazing series right now that is all about the ancient Phoenicians, going into the mysteries of the Phoenician Firebird to Phenok, who's Enoch. But first of all, I want to tell you all about these incredible mushrooms I'm always going on about, guys. I take them with my coffee every day, and that includes cordyceps. You take them for energy, take them for libido. They are absolutely amazing at how they make you feel. And when you combine them with lion's mane is incredible. This boosts up your memory, your focus, your concentration, also good for the immune. And you can have so many other combinations from reishi to chaga. I get them from neurobuddha.com. And I'm telling you, if you want to feel amazing, I've actually gotten rid of all the other supplements I was taking, and now I just take these functional mushrooms, and I had no idea how great they were. But if you do punch in the code Enoch20 at checkout at NeuroBuddha, it will give you 20% off. And we want to give a special shout out to our friend of the show, Michelle Hood. Michelle makes the most amazing Oregon pyramids. You put these in your office. They change the energy, the way you feel. They're beautiful, the way that they glimmer in the sun. They have crystals and gorgeous designs. You definitely want to get on over to Light the Light Pyramids and look at their amazing selection. I am so excited about today's show. I don't even know where to begin. Let's start off by talking about the Phoenix, the Phoenician Firebird. Karim, tell us how that relates to the mysteries and from where you are.
Yeah, thank you, Johnny, for having me on the show. I'm so excited to be here. Actually, I want to try these mushrooms one day. So
I'll talk to the NeuroBuddha guys. We'll get you some.
Yeah. Well, you know, when we talk about the Phoenicians, most people, little is known about the Phoenicians. So all the majority of the articles that you may find and the books that had been written about the Phoenicians are a two-dimensional, conventional, classical narration about the Phoenicians. But the Phoenicians are actually going back to the history and mystery. There are layers and layers upon layers upon layers concerning the Phoenicians. So, and the phoenix is not just a mythological bird, but it represents the cycle of regeneration and the cycle of immortality, because the phoenix represents, it dies and after 3 days resurrected from the burned ashes, and his ceremonies were actually celebrated in Baalbek, in the ancient city of Baalbek, which was called originally Enochia. And Enochia is coming from Enoch, and it was built actually by Cain, who is considered to be the son of Enoch. So he built that city, and the ceremony that was actually taking place in Baalbek is to because the Phoenicians, they had a lot of ideas about that life does not end with death. So there is always a hope in the Phoenician culture for the regeneration and rebirth and immortality. So Cain wanted to honor his father Enoch, sometimes in different line of generations, the Setite line and the Kenite line. So sometimes Cain is the father of Enoch, or Enoch is the father of Cain. So it doesn't matter. But the idea of immortality and the rebirth, with the symbol of the firebird, the phoenix, that has been, for centuries, for thousands of years, the symbol of ancient Phoenicia, is inside the mysteries itself.
Speaking of the mysteries, though, when we look at the Masonic allegories, and we even look at the story of Hiram Abiff, the widow's son,
Yeah.
and all these areas, we get references that bring us over to Lebanon. So when we look at this story, or even the old Masonic nursery rhyme, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, merrily,
Yeah.
merrily, life is but a dream. Are we no doubt making a references to the fact that these ancient seafaring people, which had the cedars of Lebanon, which we have
Exactly.
over there, no doubt connect them to so many other groups. So when we look at the Phoenicians, we could say, okay, Phoenician becomes Venetian. And then we could say Phoenician, Venetian, and even Khemetian when we look over to Egypt, which I know you're going to be able to get into today, the connections between Egypt as well as Phoenicia. However, we also, as some have pointed out, a connection, look over to the Vikings, but also the Druids. Jordan Maxwell always used to tell me that it was his belief that the Druids came from there. And that's where they got the idea of the magic wand from the Hollywood, and they brought in their various beliefs and traditions. What do you think about that idea of a lot of these groups coming from there, these seafaring people coming from Phoenicia?
Yeah, well, what you're saying is a wrapping up of the whole thing, But yeah, definitely Hiram Abiff is considered to be the new Cain, the new builder, because Cain was just, I mean, uh, uh, he was not a builder. Suddenly he became a builder, and he got the knowledge of building and the construction from the angels his father Enoch met in visions upon Mount Hermon, and who gave him the instructions, not only the Kabbalah that he received, but also the way how to construct. And in the book of Enoch, we find that Uriel, the archangel Uriel, gave Enoch the art of masonry. So Hiram Abiff is coming from that school of sacred builders that appeared in Baalbek and in Jebel, which is Byblos, and then in Tyre. So Hiram Abiff represents also in masonry, in the third degree, the resurrection of the master, which we see that in Christianity, Jesus resurrecting after 3 days. So it is all linked together. Now the Phoenicians, of course, they excelled in trade. They were merchants, successful merchants, but they were great seafarers. And not only they reached Europe and Marseille, which is Marsail, which means the port of Il. Il is the supreme god of the Phoenicians. That's why we say Marsail, Marseille. And not only reaching Britain, which is the ancient name of Britain is Britannica, which is a derivation from the name Bartanach, which means the land of tin, because the Phoenicians used to bring tin from Cornwall in England and used to trade all over the Mediterranean. And now even these Phoenician seafarers also, they went far as the Americas, both and founding, wherever they went, they settled. They are known as to settle stations on the routes, wherever they were crossing around the globe, and even the word Phoenicians who consider themselves as Canaanites, and Canaan or Kana'a, it's an Afro-Asiatic Hamitic word that means to settle or to inhabit. So therefore, the Phoenicians who actually came from Africa, because the whole population actually in traditional classical uh, uh, they came from Africa from the way from Egypt, Ethiopia, Egypt, and then to the land of Canaan, and they called it Canaan, which means Canaan. They settled in it, and therefore they considered Canaan as the father of the Phoenicians. But Canaan is also, as we said, it's Cain. He is Cain, and he is Enoch. So Canaan and Enoch, or the Phenok, is the same name. Now, definitely, when they used to travel, they brought with them all the culture, the mysteries of the Phoenicians into the land. They built settlements and they built temples, you know, like in Europe and in Americas and everywhere. So the connections between the Phoenicians and the Britons, actually, you know, some people consider that the name Britain, other than it's coming from the word Bartanach, it's coming from the word Barati, which is a Phoenician goddess of the sea, you know, and the name Barati probably gave the word to Beirut, the ancient word for the Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, as well as to Britain. So the connection is there. Very much, I mean, even Manly P. Hall considered that the Druids, they received all their knowledge and all their tradition from the Phoenician seafarers.
Did the word Bible come from biblos?
Yeah, that's a very classical way of saying it, you know. And the Bible or the papyrus from Egypt, Biblos from Biblos, but Byblos, the ancient name of Byblos is Jebel. This is the actual name of the city, which means the sacred land of Il, because it was in Jebel, according to San Junyatun. He wrote in his book, The Theology of the Phoenicians, that it was Il or Al or Al, the supreme Phoenician god, built Jebel as a place for him.
Let me ask you this, because you have written extensively about Pythagoras, or as we say over in here in Europe, we say Pythagoras.
Pythagoras,
what you have said before is that Pythagoras was heavily influenced by those parts, and of course we originally connect him to Samos. The way that Pythagoras was murdered and his little school burned to the ground, Godfrey Higgins had often compared him to Jesus and said, okay, this story is very similar to how his life worked, and he went out to these mystery schools, and part of his life he was teaching people, and there he was basically crucified. But my question for you is, how much of an influence were those parts into his teachings and his learning?
Yeah, Pythagoras was actually born, according to all the references that I mean, what I was researching for the book Pythagoras the Mathemagician. So I found that his place of nativity is Phoenicia, is ancient Phoenicia, because his father was a Tyrian merchant by the name of Nisarchus, and his mother is Parthenis. She's from Saida, you know. So when you collect all these pieces together, you find that he is from a native from Phoenicia. Now, Pythagoras was also the student of Thales, who was considered to be a Greek, but he's not. He's a Phoenician philosopher, as well as Pherecydes, his uncle. You know, so he learned the mysteries from the Phoenicians, and then he actually got initiated in Egypt. So he stayed a lot of time in Egypt, getting the secret knowledge of the Egyptians. Yeah, and in Babylon, when he was there, taken as a captive in Babylon. And in Phoenicia, he was initiated also on Mount Carmel, which is Karim El, which is the mountain of the vine of El, where beneath it in the grotto, there is where we believe that Jesus was born, there in the Bethlehem, down at the bottom of the Mount Carmel.
There's a lot of different theories about Jesus. A lot of people will call Jesus, they'll say he is some believe the story that the church gives, and they say where his life came from. Some say he was purely symbolic, and they say he's represented by the solar mysteries, having 12 disciples, like 12 constellations. There's another theory that came out we get from Celsus at 155 AD in the Talmud, which is Jesus, son of Panther, and linking him over to Tiberius Caesar. But you have linked this lineage directly to this Phoenician area. And you very famously have a book called Jesus the Phoenician, which is it not a bestseller?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Well, yeah, we have two Bethlehems. We actually have two Bethlehems. One, geographically speaking, I'm not inventing this. If you look at the map, you find two Bethlehems. One in Galilee, because Jesus was known to be Jesus the Galilean or Jesus of Galilee.
Yes.
And there is another one which is in Judea, in Judea. Now, the Judean Bethlehem is of a later period, you know, and it was a place of burial. Now, the Bethlehem that is in at the foot of Mount Carmel, there is a grotto there that connects Adon to it, you know, and the spirit of the corn. Uh, Now, Jesus, we believe that he was born there because all the teachings that he gave in during his ministry is concerned is specifically, I mean, connected to the idea of the Father and the Son. And this idea, we see it in Phoenicia a lot, like Il and his sons, Adon or Baal or Yam or Mot, and as well as in different cultures like in Egypt. So I believe that Jesus is more connected to Phoenicia uh, and Egypt than to the Hebrew Judaic tradition. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, and in the New Testament, Jesus was called Emmanuel, which means in Phoenician Aramaic, it means ill with us. He was not called Emmanuel, you know, he was called Emmanuel. So Il is with us, which means the supreme God Il is with us in the name in the person of Jesus Christ. Now, even in the transfiguration when it happened, should we consider the New Testament, it happened on Mount Hermon, and that would link Jesus to Enoch himself, you know. So this tradition goes back, and Pythagoras is within this tradition of the great white fraternity. So is Hiram Abith, and so is Melchizedek. So there is a lineage, a sacerdotal lineage that links Enoch to Jesus, passing by Melchizedek or Melchizedek or and Hiram Abith and Pythagoras.
I agree with you about the connections because even if we look at the Gnostic version of events, and we
Yeah,
look at the non-canonical scriptures, which are, they're non-canonical but probable, there's a different story of Jesus's life, and most certainly where he had gone is Jesus the Nazarene or the Nazarites. We could compare the two. What Edward Chouret, the French mystic, told us about him.
exactly.
It would make sense that he had these explorations. It was initiated into the mysteries, not only from there, but also in Egypt and Alexandria. Please continue.
Yeah, yeah, and even Edouard Chouret in his book, La vie, les grands initiés, yeah,
Yes.
I have this book in French. So he mentions that Maryam, which is the mother of Jesus, is from the Asayas group. Asaya is the healer.
Ah,
You know,
yes.
the word Asaya is the healer, and
Like the
Jesus
Essenes.
was known. Yeah, the essence, you know, the essence that appeared in the by the Jordan River, they're now called the Qumran community. But
Wow.
the yeah, the essence, even Josephus, he mentioned that. I mean, there are the essence, the idea when you talk about Essens or Essenians, we have different ideas about them, and they are not totally connected to each other. They are the essence of the Qumran community are Orthodox Jews. The essence of Galilee and Mount Carmel are Phoenician Galileans. So from this group, which are called Asayas, and Asayas is the ascetic branch I mean, it's the biggest uh, community, and the Nazarites, the Nazoreans, are the ascetic branch of the Asayas. And Nazar or Nazir is coming. It means in Phoenician Aramaic, those who are selected, those who are selected to keep the promises
Do,
of the
do,
divine.
that's fascinating. And with them, would you liken them to a secret society? Because when we look at the proto-evangelium of James and we look at the story of Joseph and how that relates, we have this story of a carpenter, of a builder that comes in there, which a carpenter, what is that? That's a mason. So we're basically talking like a mason. They would have known esoteric skills, maybe alchemy, maybe all these sort of things. Would you say that that would be a good way to say what you just said? Those who are selected.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And the Asayas or the Nazareans or the Nazars, yeah, these people who are selected from the beginning to serve the temple, whether it is on Mount Carmel or it is because Maryam was living on Mount Carmel and she was selected by Gabriel. Who is Gabriel? So
The angel.
this is the angel Gabriel. This is one side of the story, and the second side of the story, it's the initiatic name given to Joseph. You know, uh, we selected her uh, to be the mother of the Savior. Now her name Maryam means uh, Mortiam in Phoenician Aramaic, which means the lady of the sea, and this puts Maryam as similar as Ashtarte, the lady of the sea. So the connection is the connection is big. Now Joseph, definitely these people were all part of the great white fraternity, which Pythagoras was a great master of the great white fraternity. Yeah, and Pythagoras, we know that the teachings of Pythagoras or Pythagoras uh, have influenced so much the
Yes,
circle of Jesus.
that would make a
Yeah,
lot of sense. Now, for those who don't know, our alphabet today in English and what we've used around the world came from the Phoenicians. And furthermore, if when we talk about alphabets and we talk about the language and how it works, that brings us to another subject, the Phoenician Code. Now, a lot of people have heard of the Da Vinci Code, but I know you might not be allowed to talk about this right now, but there's a television series also being put together about a few of your books. Very exciting work that's being done by several productions. And can you tell the folks what is the Phoenician Code and how does that relate to your work?
yeah. Well, the Phoenician Code is basically it's a story. It's a story, a thriller, and in this book, I mentioned the secret societies, the Freemasons, the Templars, and the Great White Fraternity. We're all wrapped with history and mystery, you know. But it's a thriller. It's a thriller. Now, the production company was not able until now to find a place, a home for the series, unfortunately, due to the COVID and due to a lot of issues. But I'm still hoping that this can happen one day. But the Phoenician code is about this, is about the code of the Phoenicians found in the ancient city of Jebel, and that links the alphabet, because what is the alphabet? How did the alphabet, the Phoenician alphabet, came into existence? You know, it was actually the symbols, the sacred symbols, and the secret symbols received by Enoch on Mount Hermon. And these were the letters that actually were given only to the Enochian initiates, you know, because they represent the Kabbalah. Each letter has a meaning and each letter has a number. And together, the 22 letters of the Phoenician alphabet represent a journey of initiation that start with Aleph, which means God, you know, the number one, the monad, according to Pythagoras, the great monad, and ends with the letter tau, which is like a cross, which means the crucifixion of the initiate, of the four elements of the initiates, you know, and his resurrection into the fifth element. So the Aleph and the Tau, it's a journey of initiation that starts with God, with Aleph, and ends with the crucifixion, and then it starts all over again. So it's a cycle of initiation. It's like the phoenix. So everything, when you talk about Phoenician initiation, you have to talk about death and resurrection. The myth of the rising god actually appeared in Jabal. Adon resurrected after he was killed by a wild boar. So he resurrected. And this myth of the rising god was also introduced into Egypt, and we see Osiris rising also, you know.
Yes.
So the idea of the Phoenician initiation is actually about, basically, it's actually about death and rebirth. So there is no end of life. And the alphabet that Enoch put the Kabbalistical codes in it became later uh, uh, into that, it was arranged later in Jabal, you know, as a bunch of letters meant to be given to the uh, outer circle, to the populace, you know. But within this hidden 22 letters, initially, it's all Kabbalistic.
That's fascinating. And people can check that out in your new book, Kabbalistic Visions, which
Yeah,
even I've
yeah,
got a
definitely.
blurb written on the back of it because I love the book
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much. Everybody
yeah.
should go check out that book. It's actually very good. I was amazed when I was flipping through it. There were so many things I'd never heard before. And then Enoch was Phenoch, the Phoenician, and all the connections you were making. It was like, we're just an amazing book. You did a great job with that, my friend. Let me ask you one more thing for today's show, because I know today we're running short on time and you have had a very busy schedule. You've been filming, and I know it's a family day over there. But we'll have to have you come back on the show to delve deeper into these,
Thank you
because
so
we're
much.
just giving
Yeah,
people little snippets. There's so many things
exactly.
that you cover, but you and I have to cover so much. I would not be able to finish this show today without asking you about Baalbek. Everybody wants to know, because we look at Baalbek and it is enormous. It looks like it was built by giants. Some have said extraterrestrial. Some have said, okay, here's the ancient Egyptian connection. What is Baalbek? Who built it? And what can you tell us?
Yeah, as I said before, Cain built Baalbek as Enochia. The initial name of Baalbek was Enochia, which means he built that city in honor to his father Enoch. Now, Cain, as I said before, he was not a builder, you know. So Cain suddenly, I mean, uh, he became a builder. uh, how he became a builder. No, I mean, there is something that happened that made Cain knowledgeable about the art of masonry. And as I said before, that Uriel, the archangel Uriel, whatever you consider Uriel as a celestial being or a cosmic
Mhm.
being, is there a difference between a celestial being or a cosmic being, between
What do
any?
you think? Let me ask you this, because you and I have had conversations about extraterrestrials. Do you think in these parts we're looking at, especially when we look at the Book of Enoch? In the Book of Enoch, it sounds like we're talking about extraterrestrials, and sometimes in the Bible, it sounds like we're talking about celestial, heavenly beings. So it's hard sometimes to differentiate the two. But what do you think we saw going on there? What kind of beings were these?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I'm not, I will not say that I can confirm that what Enoch saw in his visions are aliens or are angels. All I can say is what he saw are beings from another dimension. These beings that he saw in his visions, they gave him a knowledge, and this knowledge was given to the Enochian initiates. Among them, his son Cain and Methusael, and a lot of Enochian initiates. And they started to build. Okay, so they built the temple in Mount Hermon. You know, I mean, Blavatsky, H.P. Blavatsky mentions there is a temple at the heart of the mountain, and on the
Yes.
ninth and on the ninth, it's a nine levels, one upon the other. And on the ninth level, Enoch inscribed the name of God. So there is a temple there. So how this temple was built and who gave the instructions to Enoch to build that temple is definitely not from this earth, whether they are aliens or whether they are angels, you know? So these are celestial cosmic beings. That's what I say. I don't say aliens or angels. I say celestial cosmic beings. And now it depends on the interpretation by the audience. They want to believe them aliens or angels. I call them celestial cosmic beings. For me, it's enough, you know, because it's specifically it's written specifically in the book of Enoch, which is one of the most mysterious books ever, that Uriel gave Enoch the art of masonry.
That would make
You know,
sense because
yeah,
these tools of the builder are so sacred on many levels, and
exactly.
the whole principle of it is very interesting. Even in Masonry, if you look at Freemasonry today, the blazing star of Freemasonry actually is Sirius. Well, we look over it at as the dog star. So there's so many interesting and divine principles there. With that, though, I would say just if people come there and they visit and they go look at Baalbek, I don't think that the picture does it any justice. How much do the stones at Baalbek weigh?
Yeah, these trilithon, each one, I mean, 800 to 1,000 tons, and they were placed over platform 7 meters high. Beneath them, there are stones also big, and there are also the stones on either side of the temple of Baal, which is the temple of Jupiter, rendered by the Romans as the temple of Jupiter. So this temple of Baal, we have also stones, limestone that weighed around 1,000 tons, and we have the granite stones, and there is a connection between Baalbek and Aswan in Egypt. These granite stones were brought from Egypt, or there is a connection there, because we don't have actually granite. Limestone is the popular stone here in Lebanon, but we suddenly find granite stones over there, you know. And in the quarries, we have so many stones, and they are now called the first monolith, the second monolith, the third monolith, and the first monolith, known as the stone of the pregnant woman.
Yes.
It weighs like 1,000 tons. We have the second monolith; it weighs around 1,200 and something tons, and we have the third monolith, uh, which was found in 2014, and now it seems that this one is the biggest stone of antiquity, and it weighs around 1,650 tons. Now
Incredible.
we know, that the Romans, the crane that they used to use in lifting stones at the time, they were not able to lift a stone that exceeds 55 tons.
Wow.
55 tons. So why they? So it's illogical. It doesn't make any sense that the Romans were actually the builders of these stones. Definitely the Romans. I mean, Baalbek passed by two phases of construction: the Phoenician phase and the Roman phase. And the Roman phase is just building something over the Phoenician temples. All right. Now, the Phoenician temples, there is something that people should know about Phoenicians, and it's, as I said maybe before, the history of Phoenicia is hidden layers upon layers. And not only the Phoenicians are, I go back to 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years BC, I go even before, because Baalbek could well be around 10,000 years BC or even more. And that put it, uh, I mean, during the late uh, Ice Age. similar as Tepe in Turkey, or you know, or even the pyramids, because I don't think the pyramids are
It's
of a later period.
very, very ancient. And I think you're absolutely right about the connections. I mean, if you talk to people in Egypt, especially Muhammad, he really wants to have a sit down and talk to you about the connections of that fertility word with Baalbek. And he wants us to get a video dialogue, because coming up, you are going to be on our initiation into the Mysteries Tour of Egypt. Everyone can join you in our group if they go to sabatours.com, or check our websites, check the social media. It's next March, and we're going to be having a lot of video going back and forth with yourself, with Timothy Hogan, Hank Kracher. We have a great group, all of us coming together, but most certainly it's going to be fascinating to hear you and Muhammad talk about the Phoenician Khemetian connection, because Muhammad is an adamant believer that in pre-cataclysmic times, before the Younger Dryas 12,800 years ago, that those places were connected, where we would see the Phoenicians and the Khemetians. That was all one big area. But I want to say, Karim.
Yeah, definitely. And San Khonyatun, in his book, The Theology of the Phoenicians, he mentions that. He mentions that Siddiq or Suduk is the brother of Misor from Misraim. And Misor or Misraim is the father of Tot. You know?
Yes, but so, even look at the story of Osiris, where we have him chopped up, and some say into 42 pieces. A part of him is buried there.
Exactly.
But yeah. I want to say, Karim, my friend, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so
I'm going to put a link. I'm going to put a link to your books, your website, all your social media below in the description that people can find. We can't say much right now. I know that we are not allowed to talk about this too much, but you are working on just an incredible series right now out there, and it's going to cover the deepest of mysteries and bring people on an interactive adventure into these areas. And I can't wait for people to see that, and the networks that it's going to roll out on. That's going to be very exciting into this next year, and people are going to be talking about your name a lot. You're already well known around the world. You've been around the United States. You've met with world leaders. I've seen the pictures of you shaking hands with presidents and people in high positions, and they love your work. I know your books are on everyone's shelf, so everybody please run out and buy this man's books. He's so brilliant. He could literally talk for hours and hours about incredible things. Karim, please do come back so we can go deeper into these topics. And we'll pick.
Thank you so much.
We'll, next time, instead of picking a smorgasbord and touching down a little bit on each one, we'll go deeper into these avenues. But thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy filming on these sets. And everybody, remember to like, subscribe, comment down below, and share this video with your friends. And we'll talk to you all soon.